There we go. So, welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us for our second VFT virtual field trip with the Ecology Action Center. My name is Jonah, and I'm a Green Schools Engagement Officer, and I'm joined by Chris from the EAC. Chris, do you want to pop on and say hi for a second? Introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Benjamin. I'm a senior energy coordinator with Ecology Action Center. I live in Halifax, and I'm also a dad and a writer and pet owner. So nice to meet you and looking forward to your questions.
All right, excellent. So thanks so much, Chris, for joining us this morning. We've got our virtual field trip here. This is from when we visited the Ecology Action Center actually earlier this year in the spring. We did a great tour of your office building in Halifax, and we learned all about the kind of deep energy retrofits and we were guided through the building by Joanna. So Joanna's not joining us today, but we've got Chris here to answer any questions. And so the way that this is going to work is we're going to show you the video, the live premiere of our virtual field trip. And then afterwards, we will have Chris answering any questions that you might have about what we saw in the video. And even questions that you don't have about what we saw in the video, anything that you can think of, we're happy to answer it and take it on in this Q&A. So sit back and enjoy the VFT for the Ecology Action Center. Last year, we sat down with Karen from the Ecology Action Center and took a tour of Sandy Lake Park. After that conversation, we then took a tour of their amazing, energy-friendly, and deep retrofitted office building in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We present to you today a recording of that tour as we learn all about building efficiency.
Hi, so here's my colleague Joanna Bull, who is great to talk to about what's really cool about EAC's office building.
Hi, I'm Joanna. I use she, her pronouns, and I work in community engagement here at the Ecology Action Center. And I love talking about our green retrofitted building. This building is over 100 years old, but about 10 years ago, we did a renovation that made it one of the most energy efficient office buildings in the whole country, called a deep energy retrofit. Come on and check out some of the cool features.
All right, so I'm here with Joanna, and I'm noticing it's really cozy in here. How did you manage to keep your building nice and warm?
That's such a good question. Okay, so for energy efficiency for a building, there's actually two things you have to think about. One of them is insulation, and the other one is air sealing. So the insulation is about stopping the heat from transferring through the walls, and the air sealing is about stopping the drafts from blowing through. So I mentioned this was an old building. When we first got this place, it was really drafty and it was really cold. So we knew that we had to do a lot of work both on the insulation and the air sealing. On the insulation front, if you think about the house, it's like a box, right? It's got 6 sides. So the basement, if we did the basement first, used to just be a dirt basement down there. All the heat was going right down into the ground. We're losing so much of it. So we insulated the basement with something called steel door cutouts. So if you look at a door like that, when they make these doors, they make them first as a solid door and they fill them with insulation. And then some of them get a window cut out of them. We heard about this and we thought, all of that insulation where the window used to be, where does it go? It turns out that the door company actually just has to pay to put them in the dump. It's such a waste of resources. So we called Kohler Windows and Doors and said, hey, what's up with this steel door cutout thing? And they were like, how many do you need? So they pulled up on our street with a big semi-truck with 400 steel door cutouts. So our awesome volunteers unloaded all of those steel door cutouts and we buried 2 layers of them into the basement to insulate our building against the ground. So that's one side of the box. Then for the 4 sides of the box all around us, we actually added a whole new building envelope on the outside of it with something called rock wool insulation. And for the roof, we have about this much blown in cellulose, which is actually just recycled newspapers. So it's like a big cozy blanket all the way around the whole building. So that's the insulation taken care of. Then there was the air sealing. As I mentioned, it was super drafty. We used to have a rating of 7.5 air changes per hour, which means every single hour, the air inside and the air outside changes 7.5 times. That's not very good at all. So we knew we wanted to get it down. We thought maybe we can get it to 3.5. It's an old wooden house. It's probably still going to be a little bit drafty. We actually underestimated ourselves and our building crew. So they got a vapor barrier that went all the way from the foundation, all the way up into the roof, and lots and lots of tuck tape to seal all the holes. We actually got our air changes per hour down to 1.44, which is better than the standard for a brand new build.
Wow, that's really impressive.
It is really impressive. So, do you want to know what happened as a result of all of that?
Of course I do.
Even though we added a whole third floor on top of our building and increased our space by 50%, we actually reduced our energy use by 83%.
Wow, well
So
done.
we only use 15% of the electricity per square meter per year of the average Canadian office building in a 100-plus-year-old wooden house.
Wow.
So it just goes to show that when we invest in these deep energy retrofits, we can actually use a lot less energy and create a lot fewer emissions as a result, and we can still be nice and cozy warm.
Exactly. And you were using things, you were recycling the things that would have elsewhere gone to the dump.
Totally. We actually did a lot more of that too. There are a lot of salvage features all around the office.
Well, I can't wait to see more.
It used to be that the whole floor was at this level. So that meant that when people came in the front door, they had to come up 6 steps. It wasn't very accessible and not great for wheelchair users. So we actually dropped down this whole section of floor and added this stair lift so that the entranceway is universally accessible, and our main meeting room here is also accessible to everybody. That meant that we had all these floorboards that used to be in this space, and we actually put them up on the wall over here as a really beautiful wall finish. These daylighting windows are actually an old bus shelter that was cut on the wrong angle for the hill where it was going to be installed. So we asked our building crew, hey, can we incorporate this bus shelter into our building somehow? And they said, sure. So we use it to let the light pass through, so we hardly have to turn on the lights. We made all of our own paint out of clay, chalk, and wheat paste, which is just flour and water. And in this case, a little bit of yellow mineral pigment. So it's totally non-toxic, it's totally local, and it doesn't have any volatile organic compounds or VOCs, which is like the stinky stuff in paint that's not good for you. Instead, it's all natural and makes it a really nice place to work. So this is a water saving feature. You'll notice that our toilet has a sink in the back of it. When you flush the toilet, the water comes out of the tap. You can wash your hands in it and it fills up the tank for the next flush. It's a little cold and a little bit splashy, but it really does make you think about how much water you're using every time you flush the toilet. So we're up here on the 3rd floor now, and we actually added the 3rd floor onto this building because we wanted even more space for people to be able to come and do good work together and be part of the environmental movement. The building is old, and a lot of the features up here are old. Like every single door in this building came from another building. It had a previous life. So just like that, we're like weaving together this old tradition of activism, but taking it into the future. And now this is a place where people can come and be part of the movement to stand up for Earth and for land and water for many, many years to come.
That's awesome.
So these tables were actually doors at the Killam Library at Dalhousie University. We made them into a table. So like that, we've taken a lot of old items and salvaged them and given them new life in this building. We actually did the same thing with the building itself. This is an old wooden building, and right now a lot of those kinds of buildings are being torn down all around our city. Whereas right now, because we did this deep energy retrofit, this building is now ready for its 2nd century of life, and it can continue to be a place that thrives and grows where people can come together instead of all of the heart and materials that went into the building just going to waste.
So thank you, Joanna and Karen, for showing me around the Ecology Action Center. There was one thing that you wanted to say to the kids. What would it be?
When we all get together and are really dedicated, we really do make a difference.
I would say nature is infinitely fascinating, and if you just follow your passion about that, there are ways you can work in this field and make a really big difference.
All right. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. So that was our, our visit to the Ecology Action Center. They have a really awesome building. It was super cool to be there, and we're really lucky to have Joanna show us around. And now we've got Chris here, who is happy to answer any of your questions. So folks, we're going to do this since we have so many classes with us, which is amazing. We're just going to get you to type your questions into the chat box off to the side there. So you can take questions from your class and you can put them into the chat, and then I'll pick them out and ask them to Chris. And yeah, we can talk about that. But Chris, We've never met before. This is our first time chatting, but you work for the EAC. Do you get to hang out in the office very often? Was that all, pretty all familiar stuff to you?
Yeah, I'm there most days. We have what's called a hybrid system of work where everyone at EAC can be in the building or at home. They make their own schedules. I find I often end up in the building with meetings, and I really love to be there. I mean, I think some people dread going to the office, doing their job. Probably means they're not in the right job, but I am, and I'm very lucky that I get to be there and in that space. It is really a very, as the interviewer said at the beginning of the video, it's so comfortable. It's a beautiful space, and it feels good to be in a space where like we are walking the walk of what we talk about. When we talk about being green and doing buildings efficiently, we have that, and that's thanks to thousands of volunteer hours and hundreds of staff hours, and a lot of thinking ahead and thinking about that 10 years ago and even 20 years ago when the building was first bought by Ecology Action Center.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that moment in the video where Joanna's talking about, we can take these old buildings, we can retrofit them to make them comfortable and, great for the planet. And we can end up, spending less money and saving more materials by not just tearing stuff down, but by rebuilding. And then you have that shot of her standing in front of all these other buildings around you that have been torn down and replaced by new things.
Yeah.
How feasible, not even feasible, but like, how much energy and how much stuff do you think that we could save if instead of just tearing down the old and building new, we were retrofitting things?
Well, buildings, I'll say this, that they're the third largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Nova Scotia. So, probably driving in cars would be the number one thing, but buildings are right up there. And that is the energy we use to keep them warm or keep them cool in the summer sometimes, and to keep the lights on and all that stuff. So that's, we have just a lot of changes we need to make. And part of that is because we rely on coal and home heating oil and sometimes wood to keep our houses warm, and those all emit greenhouse gases. So we need to switch how we heat them, but also make them more efficient. So I think a whole lot of change can be made to improve the efficiency of our buildings and improve how they do environmentally. And that's a big opportunity. But it does take, like a deep energy retrofit like we did, takes time, takes hours and effort by a lot of people. So it's not easy, but it just has to be made something we care about, something we prioritize is a big deal. And there's a lot of buildings, not only homes, but also office buildings, factories in Nova Scotia that really need to be upgraded and brought into the 21st century. So that kind of work can be done in all those buildings, and that's just something we all have to be part of. For us as individuals, it might start at home. It might start with getting a heat pump, or reconsidering your insulation, redoing your insulation. And a big thing that is not considered often enough, but that we really consider is something called embodied carbon or embodied energy. So it's like rather than tearing down what's there and putting in even what you might think is efficient, but thinking about all the energy it takes to make new things, and reusing what's there, but making them more efficient. So re-insulating, reusing materials, even like a desk in your home, furniture. Are there ways, rather than to throw it out and buy a new one, to reuse it, to refurbish it, to make it feel new without buying a whole new one and throwing out the old one?
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I love the desk that Joanna showed off in the video too, that you have up in the office there, where it's an old door from the Dalhousie Library. And I remember it was a big, beautiful wooden table, nicer than some of the tables that you can buy new. And it's just made of something old, which is great. We've got a question here in the chat from Tao. So Tao is wondering if you have any recommendations for how you can better seal your doors or windows at home to keep the heat in during the winter. Curious if there's anything simple or affordable that people can do before the cold kicks in.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's one thing. I mean, there's just caulking, which should be redone every now and then, which is the you use a caulking gun and you do it around the edges. A lot of people you can buy kits actually to just put plastic over the windows, and you use a hair dryer to kind of seal them, and that can be done. In my home, we often just put a towel at the bottom of the door. We use area rugs, which are homemade. So no big environmental impact. They were made with old jeans by my mother-in-law, actually. So we're fortunate to have that. But old area rugs can improve the thermal value in the floors as well. But pay attention particularly to high leakage areas like attics and doors, obviously, and windows. And you can just line them with all kinds of stuff. I mean, like I said, towels. We also we hang a curtain. We have a little back mud room, and we just hang a curtain over there to reduce the escape of warm air. So yeah, there's all kinds of little things you can do. And but I think the plastic over the windows is a big one that a lot of people do to make to improve the seal of their building through the winter months.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, great to know. I know that sometimes when Efficiency Nova Scotia, they would come in, they have things like just like even tape that can go over, cracks and seals around windows and doors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. We've got another question here from Karen Taylor's class. She says, "Good morning. How long did it take to renovate the building?" So how long was this process?
Okay. It was, I mean, including the planning of it, like a lot of planning went into it. And what they did, and I should say this was, I was not working there at the time. It predates me. So this was 10 years ago. But the first thing they did was meet with experts like an architect, designer, as well as the construction people. And they brought everybody together. So the people who would be doing the work, swinging the hammers, sawing things, hanging things, and the people who were doing the design, and the staff of Ecology Action Center met and kind of figured it out, did a brainstorm and said, this is what we want to do, and this is how we're making our decisions. And that's a key thing. How do we make these choices? Because every choice of everything in the building has an environmental impact. So how do we prioritize what's going to have the lowest impact, so the best result? And so that was really key. So that happened from the time that happened to the time it was kind of relaunched 10 years ago. It was probably about a 2-year process. And there was a long time when the whole of the staff had to relocate, and they rented an office space downtown, and it was really cramped and it was not ideal, but everyone worked there for about a year. So it was a long time while the building was being redone. And as you saw some of the pictures in the video, like the floors were ripped up, and they were adding a new floor. There was stuff coming from the basement. So it was in quite a mess for a while. So yeah, it was a long process.
Yeah, so it takes time, and there's definitely like some growing pains, I guess you could say. I really like that idea though of the builders and the designers and the people working there all coming together, because sometimes, there isn't as much communication between those areas, and then that's when projects can take longer. So if we all communication and working together is really, really important for all this kind of stuff.
That early planning work saves a lot of time, actually.
Yeah, that's a great point that I think a lot of students can take into account too. Great. We got a question from Danielle Livingstone, who said, "Are there any initiatives you could suggest for students to partake in a school environment to make it more efficient? How could they show participation in this environment?" So yeah, is there initiatives or things that students can do at school to kind of get into the energy efficiency spirit and to work and learn it in that space?
Yeah, I think what they could do first and foremost is their own little energy audit. And I'm happy to share with anyone who wants it. If they want to get in touch after this, I'm happy to share it. But we have this nice do-it-yourself energy assessment kit. It was actually created for churches, but you can use it in any building. So you're basically, looking for places where is air escaping. Also other things like what kind of light bulbs are being used. And they can do to go through the building of the school and kind of figure out where is energy being wasted and how can it be improved. And you can write up a little report and present it to whether it's it would go up, it might go through to the principal or the school board eventually. I mean, I think that's important. Just first, I mean, and these things are controlled ultimately by school boards who make these decisions, but to show them that you care and that it matters to students and that you want good choices made and that you've actually done the work to identify potential options. So I think that would be a really good idea. And then there's also depending on the age, but for a little older students like 13 to 17 range, we have a new program called Teens for Climate that is run by my colleague Abby Lefebvre. So feel free again to it's on our website, ecologyaction.ca, if you want to look for that and sign up for that. There's a sign up form. And they meet regularly and talk about just that. How can we as young people make a difference in our own communities on climate change? So it's a really cool initiative. Abby, speaking of Abby, also works on electric school buses. So it's a little outside the building area, but Nova Scotia is one of the last provinces to get an electric school bus. We have 0. So we still have diesel-powered buses. They pollute a lot. Big source of greenhouse gas emissions. Not good for your health. So we need to be asking for electric school buses at the school board level, to our local politicians, MLAs. So if you are with us on that, then I would say make your voice heard as a young person, as a student who maybe travels on a diesel bus, to say, hey, maybe it's about time we get some electric school buses in this province.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's I didn't know that there were electric school buses in other provinces too. So good to know that we have something to aspire to. I guess sort of in that similar vein, so you had mentioned, ways that students can get involved in those kinds of initiatives is to do some like audits of their schools, see where the school could be improving and send that information up. Jen Warren was wondering, and I think this sort of relates back to Tao's question earlier about simple things to do in the home to maybe insulate. Jen was wondering, are there ways that we can do simple things in the classroom, maybe for insulating windows or using less electricity or things like that?
Mm-hmm.
Simple things for the classroom that they can do that follow the rules of the fire marshal. That's one of the questions. Yeah.
I don't know all the rules of the fire marshal, but I would say similar answer is pay attention to the windows, which are even the best windows, which I'm skeptical are what's in the schools, but like the best triple glazed windows still are a major point of heat escape. So doing that layer of plastic, which I don't see why that would be any issue with the fire. I don't think that's a fire hazard at all. Make sure they're well sealed around the edges. You can lay towels and things like that to protect them, or other cloth garments. I don't know, and I also don't know how much control students or teachers have over the climate of a specific room, but I mean, just keeping it climate. I mean, you want to keep it comfortable, but make sure it's not cranked up all the way into the 20s. Maybe 20 or 21 is sufficient. So keeping an eye on stuff like that. I mean, that's some basic stuff, but I think understanding your building and the building science, which is really just the basics of where the heat does get out, and the importance. And the three key principles in any building is insulation. So that's keeping it warm in the first place. The building envelope, so making sure that means that it's well sealed and that heat is not escaping, cold is not getting in. And third is the source of heat. So it'd be interesting to look at, maybe that's something to educate, to do some education on, is, oh, how is our building actually heated? Is it using an oil boiler, which is very common? Are there heat pumps in any schools? Are they electric? And connect that also to the grid and how the grid is heated, which is still largely coal, although wind energy is an increasing percentage of how much energy we use. So that's a positive development that is happening, but we're still very coal dependent in this province. So understanding those things and how they connect to your building as well is really key. So that goes
Great.
beyond the simple, but it is important.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And I think sometimes when we go into classrooms, we will also talk to, mention about things like phantom power, or like things that are plugged in that aren't being used. So just like, turning things off when we're not using them, unplugging things when we're not using them. And I guess maybe in the classroom too, things like, I know from some of the schools that I've been in, there has been central heating. And so sometimes it's too hot and the teachers have to leave the windows open to cool the room off, which of course is wasting energy. But there's a lot of older buildings. I have seen in a lot of the new modulars that they're building for a lot of the schools, they'll have an outdoor modular section, and all of those classrooms have their own dedicated heat pump, and those classrooms are really comfortable and cool. So I think there's definitely work going on there.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it relates to our building, because one of the key things we did in our building was use a lot of what's called passive solar, which is overly complex term for just like basically using a lot of windows and putting them in smart locations so that it's oriented to the sun so they get maximum sunlight. And what that means is we often have our lights off. We're there during the day, and even in the winter, there's not many lights on in the Ecology Action Center building. You saw in the video Joanna standing behind what was the bus shelter that was repurposed, and that's great because there's the way the light is. It comes right through our front window, and then it hits that, and that bus shelter window is on the other side of the room, and then it keeps going. The sunlight keeps going into the kitchen. Kitchen light is almost never on, unless we're doing a nighttime or evening event there. But during the day, it's never on. We often have meetings with the lights off. And how does this relate to the classroom? Well, I think if the sun is right, it's something to keep in mind to keep the lights off. They don't always need to be on necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely been presenting in classrooms before where the school or the classroom is lucky enough to have big windows facing the sun. And so oftentimes, the teachers will just keep those lights off as well, which is awesome. All right, we've got a few more questions here coming in from some of the other teachers, maybe some quick fire ones. Marina Myra says, what is the most obscure item that you were able to repurpose?
Obscure. There's a number of them. I'll tell you the story I most enjoy, and I think it's kind of in the realm of weird. Our front railing. So when you walk into the building, you go through that door Joanna mentioned with the cutout glass, and then when you go up that little stairs to the half level above that, there's a wooden rail. That wood came from a place called the Deanery, which is kind of a reclaimed ecological land in near Eastern Passage. And so it's, like an hour and a half outside of the city. A beautiful property. And that wood was underwater for 150 years. It was intentionally sunk to actually preserve it. So you would think the water would rot it. I mean, when things get wet, when wood gets wet, it can rot. But being completely underwater and submerged actually preserved it,
Wow.
and almost like petrified. It's extremely hard wood. And it was put there over 150 years ago, and for some reason never pulled up. And then when we did the renovation, Kim Thompson, who runs that property, offered it, and so they dove down and pulled it up and got it up, and then they dried it in a kiln, and the kiln was solar powered, so it's already super energy efficient. And then it was
Yeah.
donated to the Ecology Action Center and made into that handrail. So it was a really, like, what a story that little piece of wood has. And it's a thing I love about the building is like everything's a story that connects to some history and some other place. So we have wood from the old Roy building, which was an office building on Barrington Street for many years that got torn down, unfortunately, but we were able to salvage some wood from there. We have bike handlebars that were made into a coat rack on the upper floor. There was an old muffler that was repurposed as well for from piping, also on the upper floor. So it's just all kinds of stories everywhere you go.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, it'd be fun to go through and check out every single little thing in the building and where it came from.
Yeah, and we do offer building tours.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Yeah, if anyone wants to do a little bit more in-depth tour, you can head out to the Ecology Action Center in Halifax. Karen Taylor's got another question. It said, "What is the hardest thing to make energy efficient?"
I'm not sure how to answer. I mean, there's those three components, I think, and it's they all are necessary. And I think a key thing, like, it's just they all have to be done well. And I mean, we've seen a huge, like, heat pumps are very popular right now, and they're really good, efficient technology. We're big supporters of that. But just throwing in a heat pump and not addressing, and if your house is poorly insulated, you're still going to waste a lot of energy. And if you then improve your insulation, but the building envelope isn't good and you're leaking through cracks and through certain parts. So I think it's really important to pay attention to that. And it's really key when insulating too, that you don't neglect any areas, like the places with the lowest R value, it's called, like, insulation value. The place with no insulation, so you lose so much there. It's better to address those than only half insulated. Like, half insulation is actually better than none at all. So it's better to make sure you've got the whole building before you start addressing maybe places that could be improved. So it really is a whole building process. I mean, you have to do it all together, I'd say, rather than and it's not that any one area is hard, but what's hard, I'd say, is that level of attention to detail. And our project was really made possible by all our volunteers who support us and are wonderful, and we're so lucky to have them. But as I said, it was over 1,000 hours of volunteer time. For example, that as Joanna mentioned, that the cutouts from the door and the insulation, that was just endless hours of volunteers pulling apart the metal and pulling out the insulation. And we had 400 panels that had to be pulled apart. And that insulation went into the basement. So that level of attention to detail. We also had one of the designers of the project. His office and his home were on opposite ends of our building. So every day you walk by our building and he would look up at the workers on the roof or on the side or whatever, and he'd say, "Oh, you missed a spot." And he would kind of analyze what they were doing. So that great attention to detail and just missing as few spots as possible, that's really key for a project like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that idea a lot of there is no one kind of solution, right? Like
Mhm.
when you talk about these are three things that are all working together, there's no point in getting a heat pump if you have no insulation, because the heat that you're making from the heat pump is just going to go away. So
Yeah.
insulating is very important, right? And I think that's true of a lot of big issues where people will want to say, oh, this is the solution, or this is the solution, or
Yeah.
this is the solution. And it's never any one of those things. It's all of those things, right?
That's right. Yeah. I would say insulate first.
Insulate first. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's, of course, a hierarchy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. I think we've got at least one more question here from Jen Warren's class. She said, we have learned a little bit about biochar. Do you see potential for that to be a sustainable way to heat schools?
Oh, I don't know much about biochar, to be honest. I don't know that I can answer that.
I'm not sure what do you know what biochar is? I don't know if I know what that is exactly.
No, that's a new term to me. Now I have to go learn about it.
Okay. Great. Well, I think there were maybe a couple more questions up at the top from some of our engagement officers. Oh, this is interesting. From Katie, she asked, what advice would you give to a young person looking at a career path in the energy efficiency sector?
Ooh, I love this question. Yeah, first of all, it's a good choice, I think, right now, because the world is waking up to the fact that this climate crisis is a big deal, and we have to do something about it, and realizing that energy efficiency is a really important part of that work. And as a result of that, there's a lot more money in it than there used to be. That's not to say I work at a nonprofit, so not to say you'll get rich working at a nonprofit, you won't. Although there's a lot of business opportunities as well, and there's a lot of options. So you can be an energy efficiency worker by doing a trade, and we need a lot more tradespeople. I'd highly recommend that if that interests you. A trade could be heating and ventilation systems for houses. It could be carpentry, electricians. Nova Scotia, we have a lot of shortage coming in those areas, so there's a lot of good opportunities. But it also could be architecture, engineering. It could be a nonprofit worker like myself, or a government worker who's sort of like a project manager. Also, project management for construction work is really important. All these things relate. And we also see a lot of interesting trends, like new building materials all the time. I learn new things like biochar that I hadn't heard of, and I'm going to go learn about after this. But there's also things like mass timber, which is a new form of building using wood, but just on a massive scale. And we're learning there's a lot of environmental benefits actually to that if it's done well. So there's always new forms of concrete, because concrete is a huge greenhouse gas emissions source. But there are alternatives to it that are being developed. So that's hence a lot of engineering going on as well in materials. So I would just say my advice is give yourself a good general education, like just read a lot about it. And when it comes to the career paths, identify jobs that look interesting to you. Look at job postings online and look for jobs that seem interesting, that fit that, and sort of look at what skills they ask for and what education they ask for, and kind of orient yourself towards that. And I'd also say when you're ready, maybe in high school, to volunteer with organizations like mine, but also there's many others in that, like Clean Foundation. There's a lot of great nonprofits doing energy efficiency work that will give you good exposure to the ideas and concepts. So yeah, and a good chance to meet people doing the work. And then you get a chance to see whether it's really for you or of interest. And it also gives you guidance on how you can get the right education and make the right choices.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's like a great point that we always talk about in our green careers presentations when we go into high schools is that, when you think of a green career, it's not just, going to university for a degree in, environment or something like that. There are
Mhm.
so many parts of the building sector. Like you mentioned, trades are really important to the energy transition and making things more efficient. And so is engineering and all of those things that you mentioned. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great point. And there's no such, there almost any kind of career can be a green career if you're going about
absolutely.
it the right way.
Absolutely.
Uh, all right. Well, I think that is all the questions that we've had today. This has been an amazing conversation, Chris. Thank you so much. We had a lot of people saying they really, really enjoyed the talk, and I'm sure our students are taking away a lot of awesome information. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
And
Thanks
yeah,
so
any
much for
last,
having me. This is so fun.
yeah.
Appreciate all those great questions. Nice to
Yeah,
meet
we're
you.
super glad it worked out. Well, have a great one, Chris, and hopefully some people will be coming to visit and taking some more tours of the building pretty soon.
Yeah. All right. Hit me up anytime. See
Yeah,
ya.
of course. All right, have a good one. Goodbye, everyone. Yeah, thanks so much for coming, everyone. That's the end of our talk today. We really appreciate you all being here, and enjoy the rest of your day.